All right, welcome to another episode of the Best Kept Secrets in Healthcare. So today I've invited a very special guest, a good friend of mine, Dr. Neil Cohen, because I want to talk a little bit about your body's ability to heal itself. And see, most people don't give the body enough credit for where healing actually comes from. And when I first thought about doing this episode, I thought Dr. Cohen is an expert on above, down, inside out, which is the way the body heals. He actually even has his own coaching program called Above Down Coaching, which is basically all about how the body heals, which goes into another level, which we'll let him get into. He's also the author of Hope Without Fear. Is that the name of the book, Dr. Cohen?
Hope Without End.
A Hope Without End. I'm sorry. Yeah, A Hope Without End. And I'll let him explain that a little bit. But Dr. Cohen, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you being here. And Dr. Cohen has been in practice. Well, he graduated 40 years ago from Chiropractic College. He was the VP at the most prestigious chiropractic college in the country, Sherman College. And now is coaching young doctors on how to help more people have more fun and and helping us change the world one innate, intelligent human being at a time. So, Dr. Cohen, thank you for joining us, and we appreciate you being here.
My pleasure. It's an honor, and I thank you for the invite, Dr. Drury. I truly appreciate it.
Well, so innate intelligence, most people, I hear people on shows, people every now and then talking about innate intelligence, or innate is like, it's something they're born with. Obviously, but how would you describe to someone who's never heard the word innate intelligence? What is going on? It's obviously, it means you're born with some intelligence, right? Well, what does that mean?
It's, we look at the words, and I think, words have meaning and we have to define them. So we look at the term innate. We want to think about inborn, obviously. Intelligence means organization. Without intelligence, things cannot be organized. So the body is designed, it's beautifully designed with this ability to organize itself. So behind that organization is intelligence. That intelligence itself is in every living creature. It's not just in human beings, it's in every living creature. And frankly, it is a grace gift. It is given to us by our Creator, by our Maker, and it allows us to reach a greater potential. And it's something we never really want to interfere with because it never really fails. It's amazing. So, innate intelligence, that inborn intelligence that animates the living being, it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. And so innate intelligence, you say it organizes things. Like, give me an example of what does it organize in the body?
So when we look at the body, we see order. We don't see chaos. And you could apply this to any living thing. But particularly, I think about where the eyes are placed on living creatures. Certain creatures, in order for them to survive, their eyes can move in different directions. Ourselves, we have eyes in front of our head. It helps us look at the horizon, keep us balanced. Our ears, we have two of those, and that's fantastic because we can hear in stereo on one side or the other. The way the organs are put together within our body, that it has meaning. Our heart is in a special place. Our liver is in a special place. So there has to be something greater behind creation than just happenstance, just coincidence. And so innate intelligence is part and parcel to that. So everything within our body has meaning and has a profound place within the way our body functions. And function is the key thing. Obviously, if our ears were on the bottom of our feet, they may function, but we wouldn't hear as well. So there's something behind the way the body is put together, this incredible order that we have.
So if we're talking about how the body's put together, ultimately we were put together before we got here, right? I mean, at least the idea of what was going to happen as our body grew was already in us. So does that mean innate intelligence? We came here with innate intelligence, or do we gain innate intelligence once we get here? Where does it come from?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I believe this is what I believe. I'm a man of faith, and I believe that innate intelligence is given to us right at conception.
Mm-hmm.
At conception, we have all the constructs of intelligence because that's where life begins. And
Mm-hmm.
innate intelligence is directly related to life. When you are living, you have 100% innate intelligence. In other words, you cannot lose innate intelligence and at all, no percentage until you die, which means you have zero. So innate intelligence is either 0 or 100. You're either dead or alive. So at conception, you have 100% innate intelligence. And from conception, there's this orderly process of how, let's just talk about human beings, how a human being is put together.
Mm-hmm.
There is the first things to form, which is very interesting to me, is what they call the primitive notochord. The primitive notochord, essentially, for those that don't know, is the brain and the spinal cord. And in order for differentiation to take place within the embryo, the brain and the spinal cord must form first. So it is part and parcel the most important thing within our creation. Now, what's very interesting, if we look at the end of how a baby forms within the womb, the last things to form are the hair, the nails, and the teeth. But listen, this is where it becomes very interesting. What do we really put a priority on when we're in this world? We put it on our hair, our nails, and our teeth. We have to look at the brain and the spinal cord first
Mm-hmm.
because that's really where everything starts.
Well, it's funny. Well, not really funny, but it's interesting. I actually have a video of conception and development of an embryo, and where conception, where the sperm meets the egg, actually becomes the brain stem. As an upper cervical doctor, this is relevant to me. And from one side will sprout a brain, and from the other side will sprout the spinal cord, and then the organs sprout off of there. So I agree with you 100%. I think innate intelligence starts at the first bit of conception. I mean, what else could create that? The mom's not doing it, right? There's got to be some greater intelligence, something way smarter than we are. They can take two cells and turn them into this incredible being with 75 trillion cells and all these organs and systems and, miles and miles of blood vessels and nerves and all that stuff, right? But that alone is just to watch that happen is freaking amazing, how the body can develop from two cells and how it does. So I agree with you 100%. I think innate intelligence starts at conception. And I believe you're right. I believe it's what runs and animates and coordinates every function of the body until time of death. And at that point, basically, all that's left is just a shell, right? A bag of cells that no longer have life. Life has left the building and has moved on, right, to the next level, I guess. Do you agree with that?
That's true. That's true. And
Yeah.
what's very interesting about that, and innate intelligence, we have to talk about the word intangibility when we talk about innate intelligence. We
Mm-hmm.
all have cell phones, and yet I don't really understand how they work. I know they're cell towers, but I could pick up this device. It has nothing connected to it, and yet I could connect to Dr. Ray Drury. That's kind of amazing. The other thing that's intangible is really gravity. If I drop something from 3 feet, it's going to hit the ground. But, I don't see gravity. I don't see oxygen. I don't see electricity. These are things that I don't even see sound waves, but they're there. They're scientific. They're there. Innate intelligence is that as well. And I think that's one of the things that we have to embrace. We have to embrace there's a certain intangibility to this, to the existence
Mm-hmm.
of innate intelligence. And just because there's intangibility doesn't mean it's not there. So, what I believe, and this is according to one of my mentors, Dr. Reggie Gold, he said that innate intelligence exists everywhere in the body, but has no specific location. And
Mm,
that in itself, it's you have to wrap your mind around that. But it's really important to understand that we can't really see it, we can't really feel it, but it is there all the time working for our greatest good. We
mhm.
cut ourselves, and innate intelligence goes to work and helps stop the bleeding, form the scab, and heal the cut. We digest food, and the body knows exactly what to do with the nutrients that are in that food, and then the things that are not nutritional form waste products. So innate is all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one of the things I'd like to address, because so many people look at health from an outside in, and you don't blame them. I mean, heck, you turn on the TV for 10 minutes, you've seen 12 commercials that tell you need to take this pill, potion, or lotion in order to, to feel normal or better or whatever. And so we're brought up from the time we were born, you stick needles in babies and everything to be, God didn't give you everything you need. You got to have all this stuff from outside in. And if it's not in the form of a pill, potion, lotion, or shot, then it's in the form of a vitamin or a mineral or a pill or something, right? And when actually the truth is that God gave us everything we need, and it controls every function in the body. That is the innate intelligence, right? It controls our heart rate, our blood pressure, our digestion, our immune function. Everything's controlled through innate intelligence. And if you would start, first of all, just recognize the fact that's the foundation for life. In turn, that's the foundation for health and healing. Then it takes a lot of the stress off of it. You're not looking for the latest and greatest new pill or drug or even doctor, that's going to heal you.
Yeah, you pack so much into that statement. The
Right. I know.
nature of yeah, it's good though.
That's
The
a lot.
nature of man is to look outside of himself for answers.
Yeah.
And rather than looking at the maker, rather than looking at the creator, we tend to look outside of ourselves. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, most of us, from an early age, frankly, have been brainwashed. We've been, our understanding has been that in order to be healthy, we must do something from the outside. But
Mhm.
if we think about it from a critical thought process, you know, what we realize is that things on the outside, and we talk about, you mentioned pills, potion, lotion, whatever they are, what they do is they inhibit or stimulate function. They
Mhm.
don't really get us healthier. If we have high blood pressure, they can give us something to lower it. But we have to ask the question, what's causing the blood pressure to be high? And if innate intelligence is so smart, which was what we are positing, why would the blood pressure be higher? And so we tend to miss the really important question as to what is the root cause of
Mhm.
why things are happening, and we deal with the end result. So we're more interested in balancing the body illegitimately than we
Mhm.
are in finding out why the body is not working the way it needs to work. And I think that that's because we sort of grow up with that mindset. You have a fever, you have to lower it. Now, when you study fever, it helps you to understand that the body raises to the temperature specifically to kill a particular bacteria that's being invasive to the body. So
Mhm.
it doesn't make sense to want to lower that. I think about it very simply, and I like analogies. If we have our smoke detector going off in our home, we don't say, oh, that's very annoying. Let's just pull the battery out. We check for smoke. And then if we see smoke, we say, where is the fire?
Mhm.
That's the way we need to start thinking. We need to think critically about why our bodies are functioning well and why they may not be functioning well. What is the real source of why the body works or doesn't work? And I think people have shed their responsibility. I think it comes down to responsibility. What we have as a profession, and the medical profession, they do wonderful things, but what they've done is they've taken that responsibility away from us. And I think we need, and here's the word that I'd like to use, we need to empower people with the idea that the body can actually heal itself. I
Hmm.
think that that's where people have been robbed. They've been robbed of the belief that the body can actually heal itself. And when you embrace that, now you start to realize, wait a minute, what do I have to do to get my body working better?
There you go. Yeah, it's easy for people to conceptualize the fact that if you cut your hand, you keep it clean. You don't have to put anything on it. You don't have to rub it. You don't have to just leave it. Make sure leave it alone, and the body actually can heal that. But yet, it doesn't make sense when people think they have irritable bowel syndrome, or they have a asthma, or they get frequent colds. Their immune system is weak. That you can actually your body can actually heal itself on the inside as well. So you think that you have to take something from outside in, when actually everything you have is there. Innate intelligence can heal you and help your body heal. It doesn't need any help. It just can't be interfered with, which we'll get to that obviously a little bit later, right?
Yeah. So the other thing too is you and I, we've been blessed. We've been fortunate to even though innate intelligence is intangible, we've seen it work before our eyes. We've
Mm-hmm.
seen things happen in people's lives that literally we did not. I know I'm going to speak for myself. I did not expect. I've seen, when innate intelligence is allowed to flourish and to flow without any interference or interruption within the body, the person could be the best version of themselves. I've seen people just overcome incredible things, not only from a physical perspective, but also from an emotional perspective. You just become a better human being. You can be a better husband, a better wife, whatever it takes, because this innate intelligence is so powerful and it needs to be free. And typically what happens is we tend to bind it up with interference. Toxicities is what I call them. And sometimes they're emotional toxicities, addictions of all sorts. Sometimes they're physical toxicities where, we do things to our body that are just not good. Maybe it's looking down while at the phone all day, or maybe it's sleeping in a crazy pattern. And there's also the chemical toxicities, not only the ones that result from emotional with addiction, but what are those things doing to you, including prescription drugs? I mean, they do have an effect. And that interference, when it's removed, you and I and those that understand innate intelligence have got to see incredible miracles. I've seen blind eyes see, deaf ears hear. Now, I don't say that happens all the time, but the fact that it potentially could happen is such a beautiful thing.
Well, and it proves the fact that there is a greater intelligence within us, right? Or else how would we see that? How would it ever happen, right? And the same thing,
Exactly.
I've had people from all over the world come and see us and get their lives back. And most of the time, actually, I had a lady just yesterday in my office that said, hey, I've been to like 12 medical doctors. Unfortunately, she's been to a few chiropractors too. She hadn't had the results that she's looking for. And I'm like, well, that's usually when they end up here. But if we can restore your body's ability to work the way it was designed to work, then it should then work the way it's designed to work. And I mean, it's really, to oversimplify it, it's just that simple.
And it's interesting you say that. If I may just add something to that, people are so disempowered with the idea of innate intelligence that when they get those great results, guess who they want to give the credit to? You and me. They
Right.
want to give the credit, and it's not us.
Right.
We didn't do it. All we did is release it and allow it to flow the way it was designed to. So empowering people is it's such an honor and a privilege to let people know that they need nothing from the outside, and everything comes from God.
Well, and that's the reason I wanted to do this particular topic, because I think it is so empowering to know that you're not dependent on somebody. You're not dependent on some new discovery of a pill or a potion or somebody in a long white coat that's going to grant you health. It's never happened that way. No man has ever healed anyone in the history of mankind. No drug has ever healed anyone in the history of mankind, because there's no condition known to man that was the result of a drug deficiency. Okay. And there's never been a disease that was caused by too many body parts. So cutting stuff out or taking medications has never fixed anything. All it did was mask the symptom and give your body time to then in turn heal itself, because all healing has always come from within. It's never come from anywhere else, right?
That's true. That's true. And also, just to add to that, and this is just my opinion, I think the word cure is overused. I don't know of anything that's actually been cured within my lifetime. There are things that have ran their course and are no longer here. But what happens is there's a lot of deception, and words are thrown around, and people just think, we're going to find the cure to this or to that. And I don't see it happening. I see that science could be very beneficial and allowing people to live a higher quality of life, but I don't see things being eradicated and cured by mankind. And I think that's one of the things that where people fall into this trap of thinking that it's going to come from the outside. The other thing is that we tend to look at these named diseases as entities. They're not entities. They're not alive. They're a result of our body's inability to adapt within our environment. And then what happens is things happen. I mean, let's look at it from a logical perspective. There are people that can smoke their entire life and never get a disease. There are other people that don't smoke at all and they can get lung cancer. So what is that all about? Sometimes we can't just attach one thing to another and say that's the way it is. It's about adaptation, and we want to make sure that our bodies can adapt to the environment in a positive way. And the only way to do that is through having innate intelligence flow at its highest level. So even though it may be 100%, there can be interference to it, and my job is to make sure that in your life there's no interference.
So that's a great segment into how does it get interfered with? I mean, if you have 100% innate, then why do people get sick?
Yeah, well, I think it has to start again with life. We have to look at the word life. Without life, our bodies completely decompose over time. Would you agree with that?
100%.
So, let's look at life is what keeps us held together. Okay. So we can say that from a logical perspective. But what if life could be quantified? What if we, as we quantify innate intelligence as 100%, I would like people to have 100% life. Now, the thing is, there are times when we don't have 100% life. Now, we don't know when we have 90 or when we have 80 or when we have 70. We do know when we have 0 because then we're dead. And we do know when we're dying, we have less than 100%. But if we have less life, let's just say less life flowing to our organs, would it not be possible for those organs to begin to not be held together the way that they were designed to? So in a sense, they may be decomposing. Now, rather than using the word decomposing, I'm going to say that they become diseased. And so they're not at ease anymore. And if something is not at ease for a long enough period of time, it will become diseased. So decomposition at death is similar to disease in life. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we have as much life flowing through our nervous system as possible, flowing through the brain, the spinal cord, and the spinal nerves, so our organs, tissues, and cells get the right message and they can be functioning at their highest level and not decompose.
And so that's the first time we've actually mentioned the nerve system. So for those people that have never even heard of innate or innate intelligence, I think that's the next segment. We need to understand, how does innate intelligence move through? Is it just like a ghost or a shadow that, right? It travels through the nerve system. and that's the whole above, down, inside out thing, right? From above, down, from inside the spinal cord out to the periphery, right? To the organs and the muscles and the tissue cells. And so as long as that innate intelligence can transmit from the brain down the spinal cord, out of the body, not out of the body, but through the body, then we're going to have a higher expression of that innate intelligence, right?
Correct. So if we think about it from a visual perspective, if the brain is our source, and without the brain nothing works, so we can understand that we have these mental impulses, which they are somehow created in the brain, and honestly they really don't have the answers to this, and we don't have the answers to a lot of things because we're human beings, we're not gods, but we're searching. But there's mental impulses that can flow from the brain out to the body. And if we think of it like, let's say, a garden hose. If we have a garden hose and there's water flowing through the garden hose and allowed to go to the lawn or the grass, we're going to have green grass. But if we shut the garden hose or we inhibit the flow of water to the lawn, it's going to turn brown. The grass is no longer going to be green eventually. So this is how it works. Our nervous system is like the hose. We have to allow these mental impulses, this neurological communication system, which is highly organized, to send messages not only to our organs, but our tissues and our cells at the cellular level, where we are feeding each cell so it can regrow correctly. You have billions of cells within your body, and they're dying off as we speak, but new ones are being created. And if those new ones are being created in a healthy way, then we could say we're healthy. But if those new ones are mutating because they don't have enough life or enough flow, mental impulse getting to them, then they're going to change and eventually become diseased or diseased.
Right. Yeah. So most people don't realize that 1 year from today, you have an entirely different body. I think
Yes.
skin's like every 30 days, you have a whole new skin system. Every 3 months, you have a new heart. Every 6 months, a new liver. I think the shortest lifespan of a cell is the inner lining of the stomach, and that's hours. Every so many hours, it's replaced. And then the bones, I think, take about a year. So yeah. So if you think about that, if that's we're constantly regenerating, then our whole body, a year from today, we could be a completely different person. So for people that have maybe been sick and suffering for 20, 30, 40 years, to realize that if you can flip that switch back on, take your foot off the garden hose, get 100% life to every cell in your body a year from today. And I'm not saying that it takes a year, but the worst case scenario, a year from today, you could be an entirely different person, and be 100% healthy, right? If we can allow the healing potential to heal like it's supposed to, it's just we got to remove any interference to that to give your body the fullest chance of life.
Yes, well said. Well said. We have certain laws of nature, and we have to, we're under those laws of life. And, if we violate those laws of life, then there's going to be a penalty. And one of the laws of life is to maintain the flow of proper impulse through your neurological system to your entire body. And there is a way to do that. And we can do that if we understand first and foremost how the body works. And the body doesn't work better because we give it drugs. There's a difference between how we feel, Dr. Drury, and how we heal. And what we want to talk about is healing, not just feeling. Because listen, I can have 3 shots of tequila and feel good. It doesn't mean I'm healed.
Right. That's right.
By the way, I don't drink, just so you know.
Yeah, you don't need it to feel good, do you?
No.
Right.
No.
No, that's a great point.
Yeah.
We're so symptom based as a society, and I think medicine wants us that way, because as long as we're treating symptoms, we're never getting well. And that's a whole nother rabbit hole. And actually, I have a whole nother podcast you need to watch on what is health care versus disease care. But that's that system that most of us are brought up in, is a matter of how you feel, right? So you take a medication, makes you feel better, but it doesn't fix anything. So in the long run, you're constantly going to be needed. It's a great business model. You're constantly needing their drugs to feel better, until eventually you get to the point to where you're drugged up and, in trouble. But it's a great business model because they keep selling you drugs with the hopes of, you're going to feel better, but you do temporarily, but it keeps coming back. And then if you look at the top causes of death in the United States, for example, heart disease is the number one cause of death in the United States right now, according to the CDC. And I have another podcast on that. But if you think about it, what is the symptoms of heart disease? Well, 50% of the time, the very first symptom of heart disease is death. You have a heart attack and freaking die, right? Do you want to wait for the symptoms, right? And then the number two cause of death is stroke in the United States. Well, do you want to wait for the symptoms of stroke? Well, the first symptom of stroke is a stroke, right? It's too late. All right. The next leading cause of death is cancer. Well, you want to wait for the symptoms of cancer. Typically, by the time you have symptoms of cancer, you're pretty far down the road. You're probably in pretty deep trouble if you're waiting for symptoms. So you can't base off how you feel. It's just like Dr. Cohen was saying about the fire alarm going off. That's your body's way of telling you something's wrong, right? If you just wake up at 2:00 in the morning, go unplug the battery from the fire alarm, go back to bed. Yeah, you treated the symptom, but the problem's still there, right?
Yeah, and you mentioned all those things, heart disease, stroke, and cancer. Your body, because it's intelligent, and let's go back to innate intelligence, it can heal those things before they happen as well. And the key is to make sure that the flow of life from brain to body is at the highest capacity it can be. It's no guarantee, just like if you brush your teeth every day, there's no guarantee you're not going to get a cavity. You don't eat candy, there's no guarantee you're not going to get a cavity. The thing is, it's about adaptation. But the key is we can adapt better when that flow is there. So when you start talking about symptoms, we're very symptom oriented in this model that we have within Western civilization. And what that means is that we want to stop symptoms. That's the goal. The goal is cessation of symptoms. But I'm going to give you an example where you wouldn't want to do that. So, you have a dog for 20 years. He's part of your family. You love him, and he passes away. You're sad. You're grieving. You're in pain, and it hurts. Do you take anything for that? No, you go through the process. Right. You go through the process. It's called grieving. And once you go through that process, you come out the other side with wisdom, with understanding, with the knowledge of the preciousness of life and the preciousness of love and family. Well, the same thing happens if you stub your toe on the bedpost this morning. It hurts. But you don't say, oh my goodness, I got to have an aspirin, I got to take a painkiller, I need a muscle relaxer. No, you go, man, I was an idiot. I shouldn't have done that. And now, I broke my toenail. Let me clip it a little bit and I'll be okay in an hour or two. We have this obsession. It's an obsession with trying to feel differently when we don't feel what we consider to be normal. Some things are normal. You go to the gym. You haven't been there in a year. You work out. You do 100 sit-ups, and the next day your stomach hurts. You don't go, oh my gosh, I'm sick. No, you say, wow, I might have done a little too much, or I'm a little out of shape, but that's the lactic acid within my abdominal muscles that's being released that has gathered over the last year. It's a normal response. Right. And so we have to start understanding and looking at things from a logical and critical perspective. And I'm not saying there's never a time where you take medication and there's never a time where you go to the medical doctor. It's important, to have those options. But you have to also embrace the understanding that your body can actually heal itself, and that some of the things that you're exposed to, some of the pains and symptoms you're exposed to, you just need to let them run their course. And that's just the way life works.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, believe it or not, although symptoms may not feel good, symptoms are actually good. They're there to tell you something's wrong. It reminds me of a story. My youngest daughter, when one Valentine's, my mother-in-law brought these giant freaking hearts, that have like 100 pieces of candy in them for each of my daughters. Well, the youngest one, you know how the youngest one is, I would say Michael's probably the same way. They're a little sneaky, right? I know his whole family, they're awesome people. But anyway, so Sophia, my youngest, we got her a big old thing of candy, right? Well, when they open them, they're like, oh my God, look at all this candy. She's probably 3 or 4 years old. And so the thing that was bothering her was there's all these different colors and shapes, and she wanted to try them all, right? Because what's inside of them, you don't know until you bite into them. So she starts biting into them, right? And take a bite, and she'll eat it if she liked. If she didn't, she'd go another one. Finally, I was like, listen, this is a big thing of candy. You can have 3 or 4 pieces now, and then you put it up and you come back later and you can have some more. And so she's like, no, I don't want to do, I want to, and it was driving her nuts. So what happened was she ate a few pieces. We put it up. Well, a couple hours later, mother-in-law comes back over to the house, and she comes in the house, and Sophia's out in the front yard throwing up. And she's like, oh my God, Sophia's sick. We got to take her to the doctor. We got to get her, some medicine and all this stuff. I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on? And she said, she's out front. She's throwing up. Well, so I walk out there and I look down, and she's throwing up. Everything is dark brown, right? So she's throwing up all this chocolate. And so I look at her and I'm like, Sophia, and I'm like, where's your Valentine's Day heart? And she's like, I don't know, and I'm like, where's your Valentine's Day heart? And she pointed, and she had taken it around the side of the house outside and was sitting over there because it was killing her. She was eating every one of them and seeing what was in them, right? And so she ate this freaking like 2-3/4 of this monstrous thing of chocolate. Well, her body was basically purging, right? I mean, it was sugar overload, and so was she sick or was she healthy? Well, she was healthy, very healthy. Matter of fact, her body was saving itself because she had sugar toxicity, and she didn't need to go to a doctor. She didn't need to have her stomach pumped. She didn't need a drug. She just needed to let her body do what it's supposed to do. And that's innate. That's your body sometimes does that to save itself.
Great story. Great story. It brings to mind, we either have the conception of fear or faith. Do we have faith in the intelligence and the design of the body to heal itself, or are we afraid and we are compelled to do something?
Well, we saw that through COVID, did we not?
God, don't get me started.
And I'm telling you, but those that knew was like, so what, right? But those that didn't know, scared to death, right? Running around, got to get my shots, and got to wear 3 masks and got to stay 6 feet away. And the rest of us were like, it's a freaking virus, who cares?
Yeah, and it demonstrated to me how desperate we need to get this message out.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what it demonstrated to me. And that's why I wanted to do this podcast with you about innate intelligence, because people just don't know. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm 67 years old, which I'm very proud of, and I'm on 0 medication. I don't have health issues. I get checked regularly, make sure my nervous system is clear, and that's the key. And I've had some great care from you, which is mind blowing, because you're one of the best in our profession. And I love that we are friends. I love that we can have this type of conversation where we can really help humanity and impact our community and impact the world with this podcast. So it's been great.
And that's exactly why I knew that you were going to be perfect for this, because we both have the same passion, and it's really, it's letting people know. I mean, it's just our only competition at all is 100% ignorance. And those of you watching, if you just get the foundation here, if you just get the idea that your body's designed to take care of itself, it doesn't need any help, it just can't be interfered with, which is one I want to get to next, Doc, is how does that innate intelligence get interfered with, right? If all of a sudden, if at 40 years old, or in my case, 57 years old, if all of a sudden I start developing breathing problems and start having asthma, is it because I'm not taking some asthma drug? I mean, why would all of a sudden me, for some strange reason, all of a sudden now my bronchial tubes don't dilate. What's happening to the innate intelligence that's supposed to be inside me and keeping everything running like it's supposed to?
Yeah. So the word that comes to mind is interference. There's an interference within the system, and that interference oftentimes starts right from the birth process. And I want to talk about that just a little bit, because what we have with the birth process is an opportunity to bring children into the world with interference or without interference.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, some of the strategies that are used in the medical profession to bring children into the world are not constructive, meaning that there is opportunity to use what's called vacuum extraction, where they literally suck the child out. You got to remember, they want to drug. Their goal is to get the baby out of life. Okay, let's just say it that way. And I've had 3 children. They're born at home. So I have a little bit of knowledge about this, and not a lot, but I've done the research. So that they want to get the baby born alive and appearing to be healthy. So they don't think they're doing anything harmful, but I don't believe it's constructive to drug the mother so she cannot push the baby out, because innate intelligence designed her body to be able to have contractions to push the baby out. If she receives an epidural and she can't feel anything from the waist down, well, then we take away her ability to push the baby out. So now they have to find a way to get the baby out. They use vacuum extraction. They use forceps, which put a lot of pressure on the brain stem. And then they have what's called cesarean section, which we know is a surgical procedure where they reach in through the abdomen to grab the baby and pull them out. Each one of those can create interference. Even a vaginal birth can create interference. So it's very important that you have conversations with your midwife about how that baby needs to be born. It's very important you have conversations with your obstetrician on how that baby needs to be born. Whether they listen or not, I can't tell you. But this is the most important factor, which can lead to health problems when you're 40 years old. That's number one. Then we learn to crawl. We learn to walk. We learn to sit. We play sports. We get under stress in school emotionally. We start on medications. I mean, all of these things lead to interference. And then we wonder why 40 years later we get a codified name of a disease.
Yeah. And so it's always some sort of stress that can create typically it's some sort of a degree of a misalignment that interferes with the nervous system. So it's all the nervous system, basically. The innate travels via the nervous system. So if something gets out of position and can interfere with that transmission, then wherever that part of the body, those nerve pathways would be going to, then it doesn't get the full life. Like we're stepping on the garden hose again, but this time in my case, maybe it was the garden hose that leads to my lungs to make sure my bronchial tubes dilate properly. So if the message doesn't get there when I need to increase my oxygen flow, the bronchioles don't dilate, and I'm trying to breathe and I can't because because the nerves aren't telling them what to do, then that's where the interference is. And that can be the interference to your colon, so your colon doesn't work right. Now, what does that mean? I don't know. Maybe it moves too slow, right? Maybe you get constipated. Maybe it doesn't move at all. Like Crohn's disease, it just basically stops, right? So it could be to your heart, it could be to your kidney, it could be, your sinuses are always getting clogged up. It could be, affecting your inner ear, creating vertigo, ringing in the ears, brain fog, even to how the brain, in any neuroanatomy book, if you look at the function, how brain pathways work, they all travel through the brain stem. So a misalignment in the upper neck can even affect things like anxiety, depression, learning disabilities, even, psychosis, right? I mean, people can mess with your brain so it doesn't function normally. So it basically can be anywhere in the body.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's why it's so important to check the brainstem first. We want, to me, I like to keep it simple. it's like the fuse box in your house. You know, if all the electricity stops in your house, you don't start changing the bulbs and checking the plugs. You
Mm,
realize that there's something going on, and it's either at the main center, uh, or it's in your house. And you look at the fuse box and you
mhm,
see what's going on. So right here is the fuse box, and we want to make sure that that's clear. Interesting. We talk about there's a specific nerve that you and I both know called the vagus nerve, and it's actually called the wandering nerve because it goes everywhere in the body. So if there is interference up in this area, that's going to affect the vagus nerve, and it can affect anything from head to toe. But we tend to look at the effect and not the cause. And so what we want to do is we want to get to the cause. The root cause is the most important, and that will clear out the nervous system. But you talked about stress. We also have to get that stress out of our life.
mm,
And that's really the cause of the cause. So we know what causes things in the body, but what's causing them, what's causing that switch to flip in the fuse box. And
mhm,
that's important as well. And that could be something that's going on in your life. You know, you may not like your job. You may be in have family issues. We get overload. And
mhm,
that's where adaptability becomes a very important word. And we
mhm.
can only adapt to so much. A sponge can only hold so much liquid, and then it will start to leak out. That's the way you have to think about it. And, we are just not able to hold more than we can hold.
Yeah. And we could go on for days about this. But one thing that you brought up in my mind, I want to make sure people understand as well, is that the longer that misalignment has been there, the more susceptible is to stress. So, for example, even sometimes just a mere change in weather, change in barometric pressure is enough of a stress to really tense the body enough to make your symptoms actually worse. The good thing about it is if you get under care, and a good chiropractor is realigning the spine, what'll happen is every time they do, it gets a little bit stronger and a little bit stronger, which means the same stress that affected you today won't affect you tomorrow. So you become more tolerant to stress and stronger. Your body gets stronger, and the same stress affects you less and less. Now, in the meantime, of course, I mean, if there was no stress, one correction, one adjustment, and you probably never need another adjustment because but again, but I mean, hell, we've got gravity. We've got nowadays even some of the foods we eat are stressful, and then of course we got life, right? You can't turn on the TV for 5 minutes without seeing how the world's going crazy, and that alone's a stress. So we got it all around us. Will you ever be able to totally avoid stress? No. Try your best, and try to remove as much stress from your life as possible, and then at the same time make sure your body gets stronger so that you're more tolerant to stress.
That's exactly it. The body needs no help, if it has no interference.
Mm-hmm.
But we do need help because there are those interferences out there. And that's why this message is so important.
Mm-hmm.
That's why people need to understand that they're responsible for their health outcomes. It's
Yeah.
not the doctor who's responsible. It's not the drugs they take that are responsible. They are responsible for doing the right things. And some of those things are lifestyle changes. You know, I we brush our teeth every day. I would assume everyone that's listening to this would brush their teeth every day. They'd floss their teeth. They do the things so their teeth do not rot.
Right.
And it's important to understand that we have to take that responsibility. We do those things because they're good for us. We drink clean water because it's good for us. We exercise because it's good for us. Well, the other thing that's really good for us is making sure that our brain is connected so well to our body that our body is working at the highest level. That's just good for us. And if we understand that, then we know how important what it is that you and I do,
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Drury.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can function without teeth, right? But you can't function
That's right.
without your nervous system.
That's
I mean,
right.
that controls and organizes everything. You can always get you some false teeth and you'll be all right. But the nerve system, you only have one nerve system and only one you, so you need to take maximum care of it. And something you mentioned earlier about you can stay ahead of it. Just because you don't have symptoms doesn't mean there may be something going on because, like we talked about with heart disease, those people, do you think that they were completely healthy up until that one symptom hit and they died? Obviously not. That heart had been getting weaker and weaker and weaker for many, many, many years before it finally took it last beat, I guess, and stopped, right? So stay ahead of the game, maintain your health. And really, there's no, saying, preventative medicine is an oxymoron. You can't take a drug to prevent sickness, right? But there is preventative healthcare, right? You can prevent your body from getting diseased and keeping, and that's all based off of staying ahead and make sure your nervous system functions at 100%. You have 100% expression of innate intelligence. If you do, then yes, your body will be healthy and you're going to outlive everybody. I mean, that's the key.
Yeah. And the other thing that I would add to this is because our bodies are made of matter, matter does deteriorate over time. So there's a certain amount of normal deterioration that our bodies have to go through. You can buy a brand new car, put it in the garage, never use it, leave it there for 25 years. And when you take a look at it, you're going to see deterioration because there's something called entropy. And what happens is our bodies do break down. The key is, and we talked about that with decomposition and disease. The key is we want to make sure that that process is as inhibited as possible. That's why we take care of our cars, and they're not alive. They're mechanical. We take care of them, but we can do the same thing with our body. We can take care of our body, every system in our body, by making sure our nervous system has complete freedom. And that's what this is about. It's about freedom and allowing your body to function at the highest possible level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why, I really wanted to get this out to people because that's the whole empowering idea right there, is that once you understand how the body works, it's a freedom, right? It's like, okay, I'm not dependent on anybody else or anything else. It's ultimately up to me. And all you really have to do is just get checked by someone that knows what they're doing and said, you need to have your nervous system checked out. And if it's functioning at 100%, if you come to my office, I'm going to tell you, hey, man, you're doing great, right? Let's just check you again, in a month or 2 or 6 or whatever. If it's not, then we come up with a plan to get it corrected and get your body back tuned up. Keep it tuned up and make sure you're functioning at 100%, and it will literally change your life. Even if you think you're living at 100% expression, if you're not, and we open that expression up, you won't believe how you should feel. A lot of people don't realize. I have so many patients that come in and are like, I came in here because I had headaches and I wasn't sleeping and my digestion was messed up, but golly, now my brain's so clear and my vision's better and my energy's going through the roof, and they're not living their fullest potential, that's sad because you only got one life. You might as well live it to the fullest, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting. When I grew up in New York City, I grew up in subsidized housing, so it was the projects. We never had air conditioning in our house, and I never knew what it was like to live with air conditioning. Then my parents moved to Florida, and of course it was a bit warmer in Florida, but we had AC in our Florida home. And once that AC got turned on, I never wanted it turned off. And because now I had become accustomed to something better. And that's what you're describing. When you start to get clear and you start to express life at the highest level, you become accustomed to that and you say, oh my gosh, why would I not want to do this? And that's really, that's what happens to people. They become aware of how much better they are living with a clear nervous system than they would be living in subsidized housing, hot, and not even realizing that they're uncomfortable.
Yeah. And most people just don't know. They just don't know, which is, again, the importance of what we do. And so Dr. Cohen, I really appreciate you. I knew that you were the man for this, and thank you for helping me explain what we do and how it helps people and how the body really works. And Pray that those of you that are watching this shares this. I hope it changes your view of life and health and your own body and your families. And if there's anything we can do, you feel free to reach out to either one of us. We'd be more than happy to guide you in the right direction to get the help that you need to live life to the fullest. That's the whole key. You know? We're all here to, on one trip, and we want to make the best of it.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. It's great. I love this. This is my jam.
Yeah.
I love this. I love talking about how humanity could really, how we can impact it and it could be better, because that's what it's all about. Let's leave our legacy and our mark and
Mm-hmm.
be able to leave this world knowing we made it, leaving it better than it was. And that's that. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you being here. And if you got something out of the video, please share it with other people. Follow us. And we'll have more podcasts. You can actually go back, and I have some other ones prior to this that will actually kind of emphasize some of the things we talked about today. But we appreciate you tuning in, and make sure you check out the next episode of the Best Kept Secrets in Healthcare. Have a great one.